So I'm John Little. I'm here to help to show this the scorecard assessment that I have developed, that I'm working with, that I've started to share. Have gotten some really good feedback so far from it, and it's working and looking at some really key areas of you as a leader, and really key areas that most leaders are really looking to focus on. So let me start over here with our categories. So the categories that we are measuring in this tool, the categories that you're assessing yourself on, are 6 key categories that tie closely to my Embrace framework for leadership. And so that Embrace framework, once again, is empathy, mindset, brand, resilience, authority, capabilities, and effectiveness. And the reason why the Embrace framework is one that I've worked closely with and that I align to and that I tie to is because when you are able to capture these 7 key components of leadership and you can excel in these areas, you're going to be that leader that you want to be. You're going to be impactful. You're going to have teams that are engaged, that are productive. You're going to see the results that you're looking for and that you would want to get from not only your team, but also the people that they have influence with. So let's look at some of those key areas that we're looking at. So we're looking at areas around influential leadership. That's one of the categories that's being measured. How influential are you as a leader? And the questions that are tied to that are really about the influence that you have, not only with your team, but with your peers, with your colleagues on the organization as well. Emotional intelligence is the next area. Emotional intelligence is, of course, the foundation of everything that I do as a leadership coach, because as I've learned and as I've experienced and as I've taught, the more that you can get to know yourself, the more self-aware you are, the more that you're aware of others and how you connect with others, the more that you can understand how they think, how they operate, how they're wired, then that's going to help you become more influential. That's going to give you a different level of connection with those individuals. And you can meet people where they are and lead them the way that they need to be led. And that is an absolute game changer for leaders. One of the things that we always have to deal with is change leadership. You know, there's the old cliche, the only constant in life is change. How we approach change and how we communicate change and how we lead through change, that's something that great leaders have found a way to really maximize the processes around change leadership. Now, there's a difference between change management and change leadership, right? Change management are the business processes, the strategic parts of change, the process that is kind of, moving from one to another. That's the business process of change management. Now, change leadership is completely different, because change leadership is all about those emotional transitions that you as a leader, as well as the people on your team, go through that change. And so how you lead and navigate that change as a leader, honestly, it makes the biggest difference on how successful change often is within an organization. The better that you can be around navigating and managing and leading, I should say, the emotional transitions of the change, because the transactional elements of the change, those are going to happen, right? And those are things that there's business processes around that, there's strategies around that, there's metrics around that. All of those things are going to be happening. But how you navigate the emotional part of the change and how you lead that change, that's what's going to make the difference on the experience that your team will have. And that can really make a huge difference in how people go through it, how they feel after it. Do they still stay with the organization through the change to see things on the other side? Team collaboration, obviously, is a huge piece of everything that you do as a leader. The more engaged that you have your team members, the more that you can get people to be on board with one another, work together, work closely together, find ways to support one another. That comes from you as a leader. One of my mentors would always say the speed of the leader, and the speed of the leader sets the pace. When I hear that, when I think about that, the speed of the leader sets the pace. For your team to collaborate together, that starts with you. So how are you in that space? How are you as a collaborator? Do you demonstrate, do you model those behaviors that you want from your team? And when you do that, does that team collaboration really reflect with the results that you're looking for? Conflict resolution is another area that's measured in the assessment. So we've got a number of categories here that we cover in just 12 questions. But I think as you start to see what those questions look like, then you'll see how it all comes together. Conflict is something that I struggled with for a long time. I've shared that before. I've done some videos on that and did a session on that. Conflict is just something that I had such a hard time dealing with and such a hard time enduring. That's what it felt like for me until I really started to understand why conflict was necessary and how I was able to shift my mindset around conflict to recognize that it's actually a positive thing. But conflict resolution is not natural to a lot of people. Conflict just in general feels uncomfortable to a lot of people. So conflict resolution, how are you in that space as a leader? And obviously these are things that I work with leaders on. These are things that I coach leaders on. These are things that I have not only processes around, but exercises in practice. So that way leaders can get better at this as it goes. And that's a big part of the coaching that I do. And then one of the key categories, the major one, is confidence and authority. As a leader, that is such a big thing. I talk a lot about imposter syndrome because so many leaders struggle with imposter syndrome. It's all about confidence and authority. And there's a difference. I want to use that word authority can sometimes be misconstrued. There's a difference between power and authority, right? Authority is something that you earn. Authority is something that is kind of granted to you. It's the next step. If you remember a couple of weeks back, I did a session on that framework from trust to growth. It's that next step of first you have to build and establish trust, then you gain influence. Once you have trust and influence, then people will give you the authority for you to be yourself and for you to contribute, and they'll start to look at you as an authority. That's different from power, right? Power is something that people feel for themselves. Power is something that is often power is used, power is wielded, but authority is leveraged. And there's a difference between those two. So power and authority are not the same thing. Authority is truly that next step beyond influence where you can really come into yourself. You can really start to have a positive impact on your team and on your organization and on your career. So those are the categories that we're measuring in this assessment. So let's look at what those questions are. So what are the questions that we're using to assess this? So as I start to show you the questions, you'll see that the questions are built to measure you from a scale of 1 to 10, for you to do a self-assessment on yourself, honestly, from 1 to 10, related to the questions and the categories that they are associated with. So the first question, how consistently do you navigate team dynamics, balancing empathy, which is, again, part of that embrace framework, with the need for decisive action, because we want to make sure that we're getting results. So you can't just have one without the other. You use empathy to get decisive action to get results, but also manage the emotions and guide the decisions that you're making. So this first question is really like that self-reflective question, looking at a couple of key areas: empathy, results, actions, navigating and managing the emotions of your team, and also making decisions. Next question that we ask is, how confidently do you share your perspectives, balancing the demonstration of your knowledge with influencing decisions? There's that key word again, influencing decisions across various audiences from the front line to the C-suite. And this touches on a couple of areas, not only the influence that you have and obviously the confidence that you have, but this is something when I talk to leaders about that imposter syndrome that they sometimes feel I'm okay talking to my team, or I'm okay talking to my peers or my colleagues, but when I have to elevate that conversation, when I have to have that conversation with the C-suite, when I have to have conversation with other leaders, I don't know that I'm prepared to have those conversations. When I have to make a presentation, I don't know that I'm prepared to make those presentations. So this is measuring that thought process in your mind, your level of confidence in this space of having the conversations, not only from those frontline staffers to your team, but also all the way up to the C-suite. Next, we're looking at how consistently do you as a leader model a culture of trust and respect and ensure that it aligns with the expectations that you set for the team. Remember that phrase that I used a few minutes ago, the speed of the leader sets the pace, right? I always tell leaders this, and I always coach leaders to recognize that when you are in a leadership role, all eyes are on you all of the time. So your team is watching what you do all the time. They're watching what you do in interactions with them. They're watching what you do with interactions with each other, with your peers. They're watching what you do in your interactions with your clients or your customers. They're watching what you do in the interactions with your leaders. They are always watching. So how consistently are you modeling the behavior that you expect from them? Right? Because as a leader, you want your team to have certain levels of standards, certain culture that you're building. I heard a Simon Sinek quote the other day that culture either happens or it's something that you create. So it's something that you have the ability to influence on a regular basis. And how are you modeling the behavior that you expect from your team? Next question. How confidently do you leverage your influence? Again, those two keywords, again, confidence and influence, to drive effective change, because that's part of that development curve, while managing resistance and maintaining team morale. Again, when you are leading change, not everybody's going to be on board all the time. Not everybody's going to be on board, period. Some people love change because it's something new and it's different and it's exciting. Some people don't want anything to change because they're comfortable and they know what to expect and it's predictable. So you have people across the broad spectrum. So as a leader, when you are navigating change, how confident are you to leverage your influence? And your influence is often grounded in your relationships. It's grounded in the emotional intelligence that you've been able to demonstrate through your self-awareness as well as social awareness. So how confidently can you leverage that influence to influence and drive that change? The next question is, how consistently do you seek opportunities to invest time in your own growth, balancing your work demands as well as your long-term development? You know, it's not enough to just rely on what your organization may be providing for you for leadership development, because here's the reality: that can go away like that, right? And that's something that I experienced. I was in a role where we were doing leadership development for an organization. We were getting great results. We got great accolades, but things changed. Pandemic came, finances were different. And then suddenly that leadership development that had been invested in so much went away just like that. And so the opportunities that you may be counting on for your organization to provide leadership development opportunities for you may not be there. So how much time are you, or how consistently are you looking for opportunities to invest in yourself for your own development? Because it is your career. Your career is something that you're responsible for. So as a leader, you know, you raised your hand at some point to get to the role that you're in. And quite frequently, the role that you're in is not the last role that you want to be in. So you need to make sure that you're continuing to develop yourself, continuing to invest in resources and tools, so that way you can continue to grow your leadership skills, not only for now, but for the future. Next question that we're asking is, how confidently do you inspire and motivate your team to exceed their expectations while ensuring that their growth opportunities are seen as achievable and valuable? And this is, again, a question about how are you influencing your team, because they're watching you, as I already mentioned. How are you influencing your team? It taps into your emotional intelligence, recognizing that everybody has different needs. Everyone has different desires, right? Not everybody on your team may want to get promoted, but there may be some people that do. One thing that I always talk about as a key responsibility for a leader, one of your main motivations should be to get people who want to be promoted off of your team, right? It's selfish as a leader to have a team full of all-stars and think, I want to keep all of my stars on my team because that makes us look good and makes me look good as a leader. That's not the lens that true leaders look through. True leaders look through the lens of, how can I develop my team? So not only do I have a strong team, but how am I always building a pipeline of strong leaders? Good leaders create good leaders. I truly believe that. And so the better that you are about making sure that your team is getting developed, your team is growing. And I talked last week about legacy. I talked last week about kind of your coaching tree or your leadership tree. The more people that you can get on your tree, the more people that you can get developed through your processes, the more people that you can get that you've invested in, your legacy just grows and grows and grows. And you have such a stronger team. And here's the secret that I always tell leaders: the better that you are at developing your team, the easier your job becomes. All right, next question. How consistently, again, do you model the behavior that you expect from your team? Again, because your team is looking at you. So how consistently are you modeling that team, particularly when navigating challenging situations like conflict or difficult conversations, right? It's easy to be the perfect model when everything is good. When it's unicorns and rainbows, it's easy to be exactly who you want to be. But what happens in those challenging times? What happens when you have a difficult client or customer? What happens when you have a difficult situation within your team? What happens when you're just having a bad day altogether and you still have to show up and be your best self? How consistently do you model the behavior that you want your team to display when they're having those experiences? Nobody's expecting you to be perfect. And that's why we say, how consistently do you model it? No one's perfect. No one's ever going to be 10 out of 10. But again, just when you think about yourself honestly, like how aware, and that's part of emotional intelligence, how aware are you about how you act or react in those situations? Next question, how confidently do you articulate the value and impact of your contributions, ensuring that they're recognized and aligned with organizational goals? So this goes to a few different things, right? One of the things is the confidence for you to be able to step up and speak up about yourself. A lot of times we have to be our own best advocate. And that's not from a place of being braggadocious. It's not from a place of ego, but it's a place of advocacy. And it's a place of us saying, hey, I contribute to this organization. I'm proud of the work that I do. I'm proud of the people that are on my team. I'm proud of the contributions that we make. I'm proud of the contributions that I make. It's okay to say that. It's okay for you to celebrate your wins. I'm a huge believer in celebrating your wins, small and large, but also this demonstrates to your team that it's okay to do that as well within the context of growth, within the context of recognizing the contributions, and also within the context of it being aligned to the organizational goals, right? It's not always just about, hey, look at me. It's, hey, look at us. Let's look at what we did. And I was a part of that. And here is how I did it. Being able to tell your story is such a key thing in growing your career. The better that you can be about articulating your story, articulating the value that you bring to the organization, articulating the successes that your team has had, and the things that you tangibly did in order to create that success, that's going to grow your career in exponential ways. All right, next question, just a few more questions, and then I'm going to give you a sneak peek at the results page, keeping an eye on the clock here as well. How consistently do you recognize or respond to the emotions of the individuals on your team? Again, tying into that emotional intelligence, balancing meeting them where they are in the moment with the long-term objectives, right? So again, this is really bigger picture as a leader. How are you in navigating those interpersonal dynamics, which is obviously one of the largest parts of leadership? How consistently do you recognize where people are? How consistently are you able to navigate and calibrate to meet people where they are in the moment and give them what they need so that way they're being effectively led? How confidently do you influence key decisions that impact your teams and or the organization's objectives while managing those different opinions and interests? So a lot of things being tied in here. Again, your influence, your confidence. How are you leading change? Are people listening to you? Have you gained that authority? Because remember, starts with trust, then it goes to influence, and then it goes to authority. Have you gained that authority within your organization? Do you have the platform? Do you have the voice? Do you have that seat at the table? Do you have that respect from the people within your organization? Do you have all of those things to be able to, again, have that influence on some of those key decisions for your team and the organization? Then how consistently do you seek feedback and guidance and support from a community of external sources? So this is really about you as a leader. One of the things that I have learned, and I've done a bit of research on this, and it's something that I also experienced, that leadership can be really, really lonely. I did a post on this and I did a video on this earlier this year, early this month, I believe, or last month. But leadership can be a really lonely, isolating experience, especially depending on the size of your organization, depending on where you sit within the organization. Usually the higher up the org chart you go, the fewer of you there are. So it can be an isolating, lonely experience. What I have found and what I have experienced is by having a community of peers, an external community of peers. And when I say peers, it doesn't have to be industry peers. They don't have to do the same work that you do, but they may have had very similar experiences, Do you have that community that you can lean into? Do you have people who you can just candidly talk to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this situation, or this is something that I ran into last week and I don't really quite know what to do, or I had this interaction and afterward I just felt terrible. It just didn't connect with it. Or, hey, I had this thing that I did and I tried it and I'm really excited to share how well it went. Like, that's a community that leaders need. That's a space that leaders need. That's something that leaders often need in order to truly get that full experience, that fulfillment that they're looking for in their role. So that's part of something that I offer, is that community. So that's one of the reasons why I asked that question, because I want to get a sense of how many people have those communities that they're experiencing, and how consistently do they seek those for feedback and support. And then finally, how confidently do you believe that you have the trust, influence, authority, and visibility to be positioned for your next career opportunity? As I mentioned earlier, you got to the role that you're in right now because you raised your hand at some point. You probably haven't raised your hand for the last time. You probably want to continue to grow. You probably want to continue to advance. You probably want to continue to find opportunities to make more money, have a larger title, advance in your career, find new opportunities, whatever it is, get promoted within your organization, whatever it is that you're looking for. That's probably a desire that you have somewhere in your mind. How confident are you that you're ready to take that next step? Do you have that trust, that influence, the authority, and visibility within your organization to be positioned for your next career opportunity? And if not, what are you doing to try to find that? What are you doing to try to grow that? All right, so those are the 12 questions that are asked as part of the assessment. And that is the entire assessment. Again, everything is graded on a 1 to 10 scale, really measuring consistency and confidence primarily. That's how the questions are worded. So let's take a look at the results page. So what do you get after you've gone through that whole process? So just going to give you a preview over here on this right-hand panel of what you will get after you complete those pages. You're going to get your leadership impact report. And so you're not only going to be able to see it right away once you complete the scorecard assessment, but you're also going to get it emailed directly to you. So that way you have it, printed out, or save it to a PDF on your computer. So that way you have access to look at it. This is a great thing, especially if you're kind of coming up on a performance review, or if you're doing any type of 360 work internally. This is a great tool for you to use. So that way you have an idea of where you are in some key areas, and that may, contribute to some of the conversations that you're having. So just by kind of looking at it, you'll get your overall score based off of the answers that you provided, but you're also going to get breakouts in those key areas that are being measured. In those 6 key areas that are measured, you're going to get your individual score based off of that as well. Do give you an opportunity to book a debrief session. I'll go one-on-one with you and kind of go scuba into your results and happily answer any questions that you may have throughout or as a result of getting your assessment. And then we kind of give you a sense of what it is that you were measured against. So I gave you those categories, and you'll see them as you take the assessment, just as kind of little blurbs above each question. But in the report will actually break down kind of what influential leadership is and what it's measuring, what emotional intelligence is, what it's measuring, change leadership, team collaboration, conflict resolutions, confidence, and authority. So not only are you going to see your scores, your percentage in those individual areas, but you're also going to get a sense of what exactly it is that you're measuring. One of the things I talked about a little bit about is that leadership can sometimes be a lonely and isolated process. Others have gone through the same process. Others have had some of the same challenges and struggles. I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to work with over 300 leaders over the past few years and contribute to them, to their career, to their development, investing in them as they invested in themselves. And so I'm happy to share some of the results that people have shared back with me, some of the testimonials and some of the kind of the references that they gave. So I just showed some things here because it's really all about that next step. It's all about taking action. So not only do you have the results, do you have something to think about, do you have some context, but the next step is taking action. So if you're hesitant, if you weren't sure, so what might that look like? What can I expect at the end? I did give just some testimonials from people that I've been blessed to work with who were willing to share a little bit about their experience and some of the results that they received. Then when we get to that next segment in the report, the next segment gives you scoring, and also it gives you some tips, some suggestions on those key areas that you were scored upon. Now, this is a sample report, so don't get hung up on the numbers, but depending on kind of where your scores or where your assessment results are, it's going to calibrate between low, medium, and high down in this section where you actually get the breakdown of what your score was, and then some suggestions, some tips on things that maybe you could do or consider in order for you to either grow in that area, maybe, around some sharp corners in the area, whatever it is that will help you to improve in those areas. You'll get some overall tips and insights into your results. So again, don't get too hung up on the scores here. This is just a sample report. But wherever you land, you're going to get some kind of personalized insights, some personalized tips on how you can move the needle in those areas. And then finally, again, just giving you another opportunity to book that session one-on-one with me. We'll go through your report. I've got a number of these already scheduled. So I launched this assessment last Monday. I've got really good response so far. I have a number of sessions already booked to kind of go through people's results, because people, once they take it, you know how it is when you take an assessment. It's like, okay, this is cool to see me on paper, but I want to learn more. So I'm offering that. Spend some time one-on-one with you to go through your results, to have a little bit of that deeper conversation, and we'll see where the conversation leads from there. So that's what I wanted to show and share with you today. So again, as always, I appreciate you taking the time. I did drop the link in the comments here, so you have an opportunity. If you didn't see it here, if you're watching it on replay and don't have access to the chat, it is available on my LinkedIn page. When you click the book an appointment, it takes you right to the link to go ahead and take the assessment. And this is where I am starting all of my work, my coaching work from here kind of going forward, is having people take the leadership impact scorecard assessment scorecard, so they have a sense of where they are, and then we'll get into the work. So I'm continuing to build out my September cohort, as well as building our waiting list for 2025. So I would love to work with you, love to hear more about where you are, where you would like to go, and how I can help you to get there. All right. So for now, have a great rest of your day. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye-bye.